All right, welcome everyone. My name is Abby Gooch, and I have been an intuitive success coach and teacher for over 20 years now. And I wanted to interview Azim and have this conversation where we can just bring it in a video to you about how intuition and forgiveness work together. So I'm going to be asking Azim some questions. He'll probably ask me some questions as well about how really just they're really a perfect marriage, right? When you have love and forgiveness, you have peace, you have contentment and fulfillment, and you're just really a good example to the world around you. So, Azim, I have known Azim as well for like 20 years. So, this is just like going back to our roots and really just truly roots of love. But I wanted to ask you, Azim, what do you feel and where do you feel intuition comes from?
Right, great question, Abby, and thanks for your work. It's good to see you again, and yeah, we do go back a very long time. So, my thinking, and I know that intuition is in your wheelhouse, and you're probably one of the most intuitive persons I know in the world, and always love these conversations. But to me, I think intuition has a connection to spirituality. As you know, I meditate a couple hours a day, and a lot of my guidance comes from that meditation from our higher power or spirit or our inner guidance. So, I think that intuition is the sixth sense. We all rely on five senses, and yet I believe intuition is far more powerful because it comes from the spirit. Now, I am the vice chair of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and the short name for it is IONS, and the website is noetic.org, Noetic. It was started by Edgar Mitchell 51 years ago. He was the sixth man to walk on the moon and had an epiphany on his way down. And what we do at IONS is we study consciousness.
Yeah.
And consciousness is very tied into this aspect of intuition and meditation.
Mhm.
So it used to be thought that consciousness was a byproduct of the brain, but no longer, because ions is in very much in leading space where spirituality and science are converging. That
Mhm.
today there's no proof that consciousness comes from the brain. On the contrary, consciousness is universal, and the brain is more of an antenna that downloads the consciousness from a higher power, which to me makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because, intuition doesn't come from your intellect, even if you might have a PhD. It doesn't come from your emotions, even though you have a loving heart like you do. It comes from a higher power. And that's consciousness. So I truly believe that my way of accessing this idea of intuition
Mhm.
comes from meditation. And I always say, I teach this to kids, as you know, the foundation I created in Tariq's name. I speak to several thousands of students every year, and been doing it for 31 years. We just Wednesday, which is a couple of days from now, is the 31st anniversary of the tragedy.
Yeah.
But I always tell the kids, if you have an important decision to make, don't just rely on your intellect.
Mhm.
Although there's nothing wrong with the PhD, I'm not knocking it. I think the more education you have, the more loftier your questions become. So if you have an important decision to make, yeah, you go to your intellect first and you ask the question, does it make sense? Does it not make sense?
Mhm.
It's an analytical tool.
Mhm.
So you get the pros and the cons, and if it does make sense, then you go to your heart because we all have an idea of what is right, what is good, and what is just. And then you ask the question, does it feel good, right, and just? And if it does, don't stop there. Go to your spirit or your consciousness and you ask the question, is it inspiring? Will others follow my lead? And if it makes sense, if it feels good, right, and just, and is inspiring, that will be a good decision. I don't move forward on any important decision till I get a check in all of those three boxes. And I think it's important to understand that your intuition, that you download from your consciousness, always, because it's spirit, makes the right decision for you, the other person, and the universe.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And it really is often you can feel it from your gut, so there's a certain knowingness. You can kinesthetically feel it. So it's similar to your questions, the process I teach of bringing your awareness from your head. So I agree, you're getting information, you're downloading information, then you bring it into your heart. So I say, let each thought meet with the love of your heart. So when it meets that frequency of love, it softens, right? So it's like you say, have an open heart or a loving heart. Everybody has that inside of them. So when you open the gateway of your heart, you can actually feel spirit even more. And then you bring what I say, like a tunnel of love all the way to your core, just a couple inches below your belly button. And you'll get that sense of knowing, of certainty, of truth, which is fascinating how you use the words of like just or right, right? Like I'm kind of paraphrasing what you say, but it's that innate instinctual knowing that we all have of what's good, bad, right or wrong. So you'll get an intuitive yes from your gut. You say inspired, I agree. And it's also whatever your yes is. Like, oh, I want to talk to Azim. I get a yes. I'm excited, right? Or, I want to walk out the door. No, I don't. Actually, that's my no, right? So you can get your internal yes or your no, right? And I talk about it as your inner compass. So you're following your intuition to the next step. You may not even know what it is. You can't always see it. And that's where faith comes. But I love jumping off cliffs metaphorically and finding my wings, right? Because I'm like, all right, it feels good. I'm going to go and I'm going to fly. And that's where the miracles happen. So I just really invite people to really step forward into that. And then I want to bridge into the forgiveness piece because as you were talking, I feel like unforgiveness is something that blocks the flow. So when we release that and we have forgiveness for ourselves or others or a situation or whatever it is, that natural life force energy can flow that supports our soul's path. And that's where we're going to feel the fulfillment, the love, the prosperity, all of the things, right? Because we're in alignment with spirit. So I would love for you to expand on that and share anything else that you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, because many of us are in resentment, sometimes anger, sometimes even hatred.
Mhm.
And these are very, or sometimes in despair or guilt, because at some level we've all harmed as well. So if you're living in this space of anger and resentment and hatred and guilt and despair, right? It's very debilitating emotions. They preclude you from being present. They
Yeah,
preclude you from having that experience that you
yeah.
just explained of how you get to your intuition and how you get to your gut or your spirit.
Mhm.
And forgiveness of others and forgiveness of yourself, which I think is as important,
Yeah.
right? Stops you from living in these debilitating emotions. So
Mhm.
it's not about the other person. I always say karma always balances. And I forgave the kid who killed my son. He's now on the staff of the Khamisa Foundation, helping others not follow in his former footsteps.
Mhm.
So I forgave him and then started a foundation with his grandfather and guardian. And we've been around for 31 years and we've reached 2 million kids teaching nonviolence, accountability, empathy, compassion, forgiveness. But the point I'm trying to make is that forgiveness is something you do for yourself.
Yeah.
It's not about Tony. He has his life. I didn't want to go through life on crutches because
Mhm.
there's no quality of life being a victim. And
Mhm.
unless you forgive, you remain a victim. I had a full life when Tariq was alive. I have a full life now because I was in financial services. Sure, I was successful at it. But this is about saving lives of kids, far more fulfilling, far more meaningful, and
Yeah.
far more impactful. Because I believe we all have a spiritual purpose in life. And and Tariq's gift to me, although he made the ultimate sacrifice, was to put me in the work that I'm doing. So forgiveness is very key to being not only present, for being in the space where you can put 100% of your psyche into work that you are here to do. And we
Mhm.
all have work here to do.
Mhm.
Why have this meager, important real estate of your psyche occupied by somebody that has harmed you?
Mhm.
Or occupied if you are beating yourself up, because self-forgiveness sometimes is harder. Why have this meager, important real estate of your psyche occupied by these debilitating emotions? Why not forgive others as well as yourself so love and joy can live there?
Yeah.
I give you an example. I do this workshop. I'm doing one on March 1st in Hawaii. I do this, often, and it's a full day uh, uh, deep dive into how you forgive people that have harmed you, and and how you forgive yourself. So I teach 3 milestones of how you forgive people based on my journey and how you forgive yourselves. So this was a workshop I did in the Twin Cities, St. Paul, Minnesota. And one of the participants was a nice Jewish lady. And back then I was doing a 2 day workshop, because nowadays people's attention span have forced me to do it in a day, although the 2 days far more impactful. Anyway, on the morning of the second day, she came to me and said, Azim, you don't get it. And I said to her, what is it I don't get? I am working on forgiving Hitler.
Mhm.
Pretty heavy, because her family was destroyed in the Holocaust. Probably one of the biggest blemishes in our world history. That so many innocent people were gassed to death for no reason. And when I think about it, I shiver. But I told her, I could see how much hatred she had for Hitler. Her face was etched, her energy was dark and negative. And I told her, I acknowledge your hatred for Hitler because of what happened to your ancestors. But let me tell you, the higher power is dealing with Hitler better than you know how to or I know how to,
Mhm.
because there's no escaping wrongdoing.
Mhm.
And as you and I speak, the higher power is dealing with Hitler, because karma always balances. Why do
Mhm.
you want Hitler to live in this meager, important real estate of your psyche?
Mhm.
Why don't you forgive Hitler, knowing that he's being handled by the higher power? Even the scriptures tell you, vengeance is mine. All scriptures tell you that, whether it's the Quran, the Torah, the Bible.
Mhm.
Let it go,
Mhm.
because I see how is this working for you. I see your hatred. It's harming you, not Hitler. Because if you live in this anger and hatred, eventually it becomes a terminal disease. Let it go. So love and joy can live there. And the light bulb went on.
Yeah.
And even by the end of the second day, her aura had more light.
Mhm.
Her etchings were getting little fader. You
Yeah.
could see that she was making a transformation, because forgiveness is very transformative.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I don't know how many times she hugged me at the end of the second day, because I could tell that something left. Maybe it was Hitler, whatever, but that hatred left, and she was seeing more light.
Yeah.
Then a month later, I get this beautiful card from her that she personally made,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
she worked hard on it, and thanked me for the workshop. And then the PS was, "My husband thanks you.
Yeah.
We've been married for 20 years. We now have the most loving relationship because Hitler does not live here anymore." Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a very powerful example that
Mhm.
forgiveness is a gift that you give yourself. It's a
Yeah.
journey, by the way. and
Yeah.
it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
But just like anything else, as
Yeah.
you start to live in
Yeah.
the world of empathy, compassion, and forgiveness,
Yeah.
you start to build that muscle. When
Mhm.
somebody crosses me on the freeway, I don't throw the middle finger, I bless them.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, it reminds me, and this was years and years ago. I had some kind of experience that I was really upset about. And I remember somebody said something similar to you. And basically, like the universe will handle it, just let it go and forgive. And I literally saw like the presence of Jesus, and it was, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I can let that go, you know? And I also love what you said about it creates space. So I said, when you forgive, you release the block. Yes, and it also creates space. So there's more spaciousness in your consciousness, like you said, for the joy, for the peace. And then that vibration we bring into the world, and that's the ripple effect of love, right? So,
Right.
and we attract that prosperity and that fulfillment and
Yeah.
love. Yeah.
And the good thing is when I wrote my first book, which was almost 27 years ago,
Mhm.
called From Murder to Forgiveness, A Father's Journey, there
Mhm.
wasn't much clinical proof about forgiveness back then. You almost had to go back to the scriptures like you just quoted, that
Mhm.
crucifying Lord Jesus Christ, and he says, "Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they are doing," which is amazing. It's a very amazing example of forgiveness. But today, there are 500 clinical studies that tell you that forgiveness is healthy. It improves your health. It improves your prosperity because now you are present and focused on what you really are all about. It improves and enhances your relationships with your significant other, your children, your family, your peers. Because as a forgiving person, your energy is of empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at this
Yeah.
in that light, that forgiveness can give you so much that
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, we're just in the middle of a show. Can we get right back with you? Or
okay.
you can come in if you want. We're just, yeah, you can. Sorry. So it's just funny. It's like people will just come to your door and say nothing. It is kind of where it's like the energy is flowing. We're actually dealing with a thing in the house. And so the floor completely flooded, right? So as you're talking about forgiveness, I get a knock on the door. They're ready to fix it. So it literally does just open the energy. So it's just like it really is that quick. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
back to
the
what you're
point I'm
saying.
trying to make is that
Yeah.
that there is a forgiveness project at Stanford.
Uh-huh.
Fred Luskin. It's in his
Okay.
20th year. There's a forgiveness project in London run
Mhm.
by Marina Cantacuzino. There's
Okay.
a forgiveness project in Hawaii run by Roger Epps. These are all friends of mine because I've been speaking on forgiveness for 30 plus years, for
Mhm.
3 decades. I know a lot of people in that space. So
Mhm.
there is empirical data and
Mhm.
clinical studies where
Mhm.
it is now shown that forgiveness can improve your health, can
Mhm.
improve your prosperity, and it can improve your relationship. Well, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want good health and good
Right?
relationships and prosperity? And that's
Right.
the gift of forgiveness. If people really, really get the
Yeah.
power of forgiveness, they will
Yeah.
be running towards it. And yet
100%.
we don't see it because we've grown up and conditioned in this eye for an eye society. And
Mhm.
you and I talked about it when we had lunch
Yeah.
that we have to shift
Yeah.
from a punitive mindset to a restorative mindset.
Mhm. Mhm. 100%. Because then the healing can happen, right? And then we have that new frequency that we're able to act in. Absolutely. So I wondered if you'd be open to share the steps of forgiveness, both for when you're forgiving somebody else and also when you're forgiving yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, it's a long workshop, but I can give you a little small version of it. So let's talk about forgiving people that have harmed you. So the first step is grieving.
Mm.
Grieving is medicine. So in my tradition, I'm a Sufi, which is the metaphysical interpretation of Islam. We have a 40-day period of grieving. We are not supposed to cook or clean house. My congregation brought that to me.
Mm.
And I had to share the story about what happened to Tariq because he died in some pretty, difficult circumstances. He was a student at San Diego State and worked as a
Mm.
pizza delivery man on weekend and was lured to a bogus address. And a 14-year-old shot and killed him in a gang initiation. He was only 20 years old. It brought my life to a crashing halt. It's very complex to lose a child, even though it was 31 years ago. I think of Tariq several times a day. It never goes away. But I was taught by my spiritual teacher that for 40 days his spirit stays in close proximity of family and loved ones. That's why you have to grieve.
Mhm. Mhm.
And after 40 days, it moves to a new consciousness in preparation of its forward journey.
Mhm.
And excessive grieving by loved ones impedes his journey in the next world because we believe there's life after that.
Mhm. Mhm.
I would recommend you do good compassionate deeds in his name because good compassionate deeds done in the name of the departed are spiritual currency and will provide high octane fuel for him in his journey in the next world. Huh. Why
Cool.
don't they teach you this stuff in college?
Yeah, I
And
didn't know that. That's cool.
this was my inspiration to start the foundation because his name is on the marquee, the
Mhm.
Tariq Khamisa Foundation. We do good deeds in his name every single day.
Mhm.
It still gets me up because I know I want to do something for my kid, as we all
Mhm.
do. So grieving is medicine. There's a good adage from the Turkish tradition that uh, he who hides his grief does not find a remedy for it. Now, there's healthy ways to grieve and unhealthy ways to grieve. We already know what the unhealthy ways to grieve are, whether they're legal or illegal. Healthy ways is to actually, it's a painful process. You have to go through the pain of grieving. I couldn't even say Tariq died. It took me for a long time. But my congregation would then wait, and I had to explain all the details. It was like taking a scab off the wound, but the scab that reformed was a little smaller. And I'm glad I went through those 40 days. I don't know how many times I repeated that story, but it was cathartic.
Mhm.
So grieving is to share, to get therapy, to journaling was big for me, spending time with nature.
Mhm.
And I spent a lot of alone time too, meditating.
Mhm.
But I grieve, actually 40 days wasn't enough. It took me almost 3 years. I, I, I was in a relationship and she broke it up the Monday before the Saturday that Tariq died. So it was a pretty tough that I lost my relationship. But in a way it was good because then I was not ready for a relationship because I was grieving. So it depends on the level
Mhm.
of your um, of your hard hit because we all get hard hits as to how long it takes. But grieving is medicine. The second part of that is to give up all the resulting resentment. And you do that through two things by building your empathy muscle and your intention. Wayne Dyer wrote a book on the power of intention.
Mhm.
Because forgiveness at the end is a gift, is a blessing. So, what is a blessing? That's when preparation meets grace. So, if you go into meditation and you set the intention of forgiving that person, the how is not important, the what is important. And you continuously go to that meditation and you want to forgive this person, free yourself and free him from not living in this important real estate of your psyche. And every time you go back there, because when you are in a meditative state, it's a very fertile ground where you plant the seed, and the seed is your intention to forgive. And every time you go back there, it's like watering and nurturing that seed. And just like I was graced with the blessing of forgiveness, so shall you be. But you have to stay with it. So you're giving up all the resentment and you are building your empathy muscle. It's important to stay there. The third piece is you reach out. Not everybody has to reach out to the person who murdered their child. Very often, the issues are ex, exes, family. I get a lot of family issues: father, son, mother, daughter. You know, peers at work. I teach this work in the workshop, in a corporate workshop, a little different about how you transform conflict into unity. Because we all have somebody in our life. The kid who killed my son, his name is Tony. I always ask him, who's the Tony in your life? So, you know, you have to reach out. And you don't have to reach out alone. I mean, I went to meet him 5 years after the tragedy and then stayed with him for 20 more years while he was in prison and advocate for his release. He was finally released at 39 and he murdered my son at the age of 14. So he was there for 25 years. And he's now part of the staff. So the reaching out often, I mean, I did a workshop in London and there was a lady in my workshop that had not talked to her mother for 25 years. Mm. And one of the exercises I do is I tell them to write a letter where she would take the responsibility for the breakage of a relationship with the mother, but not blame her mother, even though it takes two hands to clap. And she did, and she wrote this letter. I mean, there was not a dry eye in the whole group. I mean, we were so moved with what she said. Now they talk every day. Mm-hmm. So those are the 3 steps. I know it's very brief, and I can spend the rest, of the day talking about it. Mm-hmm. On the other side, when you're forgiving yourselves, the first step is to take responsibility for your actions. Mm-hmm. Tony did, because I forgave him. He said at his court hearing, I shot and killed Khamisa, a person I did not know was not doing anything wrong. When the judge asked, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty, they normally say, well, not guilty, right? He didn't say that. I shot and killed Khamisa, a person I did not know was not doing anything wrong to me. I am guilty. Because the tendency is when things don't go well for us, we blame everybody else. Well, I believe that everything that happens to you, and I learned this from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you attract. So in other words, everything that happens to you is not because of the other person, it's because of you. You have to change. You have to take responsibility for your life, not blame somebody, which is a big step. When things are not working for you, rather than blaming others, try and look at yourself and say, why am I attracting this? What is the universe trying to tell me? Because the universe will continuously nudge you. And then when you start to look at your own life, that's a big step. Mm-hmm. The second step is you ask forgiveness of the people you've harmed. Tony said that in his hearing speech, that I'd already forgiven him because this happened like 2.5 years and I started the foundation 9 months. I pray to God that Mr. Khamisa would forgive me for the harm that I've caused him. Whether that forgiveness is granted or not, it's the right thing to do. To have a sincere apology. To not just say, I'm sorry, but to really feel it, mm-hmm. that you have, that you really feel this with your heart, that you are definitely sorry, as Tony was. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, I know he was in tears because he'd hurt so many people, including his own family, because his grandfather has to live, with this issue about his grandkid killed an innocent person. Mm-hmm. That's a tough thing to live with, mm-hmm. right? So he knew he'd hurt not only my family, but his family as well. Mm-hmm. The third piece is to change your behavior forever. Tony's not about ganging. And help another person not follow in your former footsteps, which he's doing now, working with the foundation. Mm. He's saving a lot of kids. He's joined a gang at the age of 11. He's saving a lot of kids that are thinking about joining a gang at 11. Mm. And it's called redemption. Mm-hmm. And I teach this work in prison, that you have to change your behavior forever. He's no longer about drugs and gangs and all of that. He's about, helping other kids not follow in his former footsteps. And because when you do something wrong, right, it becomes a festering wound, in your heart. And to heal that wound, you have to shift your behavior and help others. And by doing that, you eventually will able to heal that wound and forgive yourselves.
Mhm.
So those are the steps I take. But most of the workshop are pretty intense. There's a lesson. Every step has experiential exercises, and there is sharing, and there is a Q&A. Because I've yet to meet a person that cannot use forgiveness of the people. Because we've all had hard knocks. They always, as you said, life happens, and at some level we've harmed too, and that can be very debilitating. So I've walked through this. I've had a tremendous amount of success with this workshop, where most of them do get a breakthrough. Because it's very transformative work. Because once you get forgiveness, they're never the same. And one of my quotes is, in life you're going to get many defining moments. At those defining moments, if you make the right choice, you manifest a miracle. And forgiveness, for me, was the right choice. And yes, it manifested a miracle. I'm at peace. And, and my life changed, and I'm very fulfilled by. I've personally reached over 1 million kids. I've given over 1,000 presentations teaching this stuff. So it's a gift.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful. As you were talking, I felt the space in my body open, right? Just like where I was holding tension, it just, whew, it opened, right? So it really is like a full body experience, right? You're embodying the new energies for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a gift. I'm glad I went this way. My mother was very spiritual. My dad was a businessman. So I grew up with equal emphasis
Mhm.
on my career and my spiritual foundation.
Mhm.
Thank God for that,
Yeah.
because I went to some pretty good schools in England. In my darkest night of the soul, my degrees in math and finance were useless. What
Mhm.
saved me was my spiritual foundation. It doesn't matter what your spiritual beliefs are, but it's important to have a spiritual belief, because the true answers, as we talked about earlier, don't reside in your intellect or in your heart or your emotions. They reside at the level of the spirit, at the level of the consciousness. Even Einstein, one of his quotes is, he says, we must take care not to make intellect our God. Sure, it has powerful muscles but no personality. It cannot lead, it can only serve. And I learned this the hard way. I used to lead from my intellect. Many of us do. We get a bachelor's degree and whatever, PhD. Now I don't. I lead from the spirit, because I know spirit is mightier than intellect and emotion. And we talked about that I don't make any decision till I get validation from my spirit. And you talked about it, that there is this knowing, this inner knowing that we all are born with. And I totally agree that we tend to rely on our five senses, but the strongest sense is the sixth sense, which is intuition.
Yeah. Yeah, and you describe it really well as knowing. So to kind of balance out the thought of like the intellect with intuition, I 100% agree that intuition is spiritual and it's also very practical. So, I use it in business. I've had my company since I was 19. I coach CEOs, people just like you all over the world because it's smart. It's you make the clearest, actually most logistical decisions really from your intuition. And there's studies that there's 500 million cells in your gut alone. So, meaning the intelligence of your gut is actually more than your brain.
Right.
So, it's just really cool to see that, like, it's not esoteric woo-woo, it's spiritual and very practical. It's like the best thing you can do for yourself, right? You serve in every level. So, I just love that because I kind of like to demyth the whole, thing that it's out there. No, it's very much here. It's very grounded in
Yeah.
reality.
And I think there are many examples of it, because you can walk into a room full of people and you haven't met anybody yet, but you are automatically attracted by some and automatically the opposite with others without even talking. So who's working here, right? So we have this inner sense.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when something you get a message of that you're in danger or whatever, right? It kicks in before the actual event. But but people haven't developed that sense. And my own practice, and I teach meditation. I've written 5 books. Is that is my portal, if you like, to intuition, to consciousness, where I believe the right choices manifest.
And then the calls come in. Totally. I love that. And it is inspiring, right? It gives you that energy to move forward to that next step, which is always fun.
Right.
So let's see. Is there anything else you want to just share about just the merging of intuition with forgiveness, like how life becomes better as you listen?
Yeah, and
Here.
I think that forgiveness is going to help you build on your sixth sense,
Mhm.
simply because you are not in this debilitating emotions.
Right.
So let's kind of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
Something else I learned from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that every emotion has a frequency. Some emotions have a very low frequency, some have a very high frequency. So, for instance, we talked about anger, hatred, shame, guilt, despair. These are very low frequencies. Happiness doesn't live there. Then
Mhm.
there are some very high vibration emotions like goodwill, like friendship, like empathy, like compassion, gratitude. Forgiveness is right there with love, very high frequency.
Mhm.
Happiness lives there. So it's not complicated to know at any given moment, even at this moment, where are you vibrating? Are you vibrating down here in low frequency, or are you vibrating up here in those high frequencies? Now, when
Mhm.
you meet somebody like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, well, he's vibrating here 24/7. But us mortals all have a bad hair day, right? I mean, it happens to me too. And you get angry, right? And you fall off the wagon. Now, I meditate 2 hours a day. When I fall off the wagon, right, I add another half an hour and I get back up here. But I can tell you this, Abby, having done this work for 30 plus years, I'm spending more time in this high frequency emotions. And when I'm there, I'm in the flow, I'm happier, and I'm healthier. So this is a good takeaway, that forgiveness and intuition can help you live in these high frequency emotions.
Mhm.
And I think we can all do that because it's not that complicated. You know, one of the ladies on my team, Misha, she does my newsletters and social media and all of that stuff. She's been with me for many years. Always says, Azim, I have a little Azim on my right shoulder. So every time I get angry, I think about you.
Cute. Little guardian angel. That's adorable. I love that.
So yeah, as I said, it was the right choice for me. I'm glad I didn't go the other way. A lot of good has come out of it, and it just shows you. It just shows you what's possible, And and I think forgiveness is the miracle of life. So hope whoever is listening to it, I hope this finds itself to the heart, to every healing heart, because forgiveness is an elixir. It's a balm that can heal much better than any known medicine, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I love that you were saying, you meditate as a way to become more intuitive. And before we got on, you were saying how you walk a long time, I run a long time. So whatever the things you guys can do or you ladies can do to become more aware of your intuition through meditation or nature or ways just to feel your body, it'll start opening that sixth sense. And obviously, I do this professionally. So if you want to go to my site, lifeforceconnection.com, you can see about the intuitive development programs there. And then Azim, they have your website, right? Just go to Azim Khamisa to learn more about forgiveness. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's my azimkhamisa.com, and I often do this workshop. In fact, there's one coming up March 1st in beautiful Hawaii. So if
right.
you're dealing with some heavy duty issues,
Yeah.
join me. Yeah, it's very transformative. Most everybody has a breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah. What island is it on in Hawaii? I
It's
love
on
Hawaii.
Oahu.
Okay.
It's in Honolulu, at the convention center.
Wow.
I do this every year, and there's a conference called IVAT, Institute of Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. And they attract 14, 1,500 people, and some of them go to my workshop.
Mm,
But it's intense. I try and keep the workshop under 40 people because it's
mm,
very intense.
mm,
And we cut it off at that level. So, um, and it's a good conference, if you're in this space, if you're working in trauma, or if you are a therapist, or a psychologist, or a social worker, or working, in the medical profession. I get a lot of PhDs and MDs that work with victims, and they take the workshop. It's a couple hundred speakers that go to this workshop, to this conference, and it's very leading edge knowledge in all of these areas. And I've been speaking there for over 20 years now, and it's ivatcenters.org. IVAT centers.org is the website.
mm. Wow. Well, thank you everyone for just being with us during this time and just following your intuition and forgiving and just being the light that you are. Just it's always such a joy to connect. And yeah, just so grateful for you, Azimi, for sure.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. Always great to be in your energy and company.
Of course. All right, everyone. We'll talk soon. Lots of love. Bye.